Hi, this is Marlo Balmanno, the producer of Latter-day Left. This week we bring you a double episode of Politics and General Conference Notes. Anneke Garcia joins Alain and Cris Balmanno for a touching conversation about faith and the state of society. Part 2 includes deep fake technology, journalistic integrity, what's going on with Texas, not my religion, then no religion will be represented, immigration, plus general authority representation and why it matters. Make sure to listen to Part 1. Remember, if you like our podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on podbean.com. Now on to the show.
All right, let's move on because we've been talking about this for a long time.
We've done a lot of talking.
So people listening like, yeah, no kidding. All right, we're going to move away from the church stuff. We're going to get on to other stuff, political stuff.
Oh.
Okay. Is that what we talked about on the podcast?
There's no politics in church?
Well, no, but we just talked about politics in church. It's called, in Utah, they call it the culture, but.
Can I just say, I mean, conference was great. There were so many great and wonderful thoughts.
Has there ever been a time, though, where you came out and said, conference is all right. I'm not,
Okay, I know plenty of people who have a really hard time during conference because of specific issues and the way things are said, and it's like they have a hard time getting through it sometimes. And I think it's okay to say conference wasn't great.
Right.
And I think it's okay to be like, I appreciated that moment.
But I've never actually heard somebody say,
well, you're not allowed to because it's Utah.
Right.
So let me say something that's going to shock some people. But and now I'm going to forget his name. But there's one of the apostles that I have never liked one of his talks until today.
And then today you did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I felt that way about...
And it's the elder that used to be... Come on, he used to be president of BYU, Idaho.
Elder Bednar?
Yeah. Elder Bednar.
Yeah.
I have never connected with Elder Bednar.
Yeah.
Today, I listened to him and I said, oh my gosh, I like what he just said. Everything. It was wonderful. Mm-hmm. So, thank you.
I had that with one of the apostles. I can't remember his name now. Cause he's dead. But...
He's dead.
He's not a current apostle. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay, thank you.
He's a former apostle. But the only way to... I love that, by the way. That who was it who said, so I've had a lot of church callings and releasings, but now I'm in a calling where I'm not looking forward to the releasing. Because the only way to do it is to die.
That's right. That's right.
So, you see a former apostle, it's either the president or somebody who's dead, okay?
Yeah,
There's only one way out of that job.
That's true. Yeah.
So it's a former apostle, but... Everything, it was very monotone, and everything is, you're a sinner, you're not worthy, repentance is the only way. Every talk, he never connected with me. Just the way he delivered his talks, what he said, never changed. It didn't matter.
I remember exactly what you're talking about.
I can't remember.
Which is why there are 12 apostles.
Right. But I'm just saying,
because
I've had
you can find one that you can connect with.
I've had a couple who I've had a hard time connecting with. I've had a couple who, I like and love listening to.
Let me just say, Elder Holland, my gosh, another marvelous talk.
He's good.
Yeah.
Oh.
He doesn't get bad ones.
No.
All right. Where to go? Let's talk about, there's deep fake. You said you wanted to talk about.
I wanted to bring up deep fake, and it's great.
I think most of these topics are going to have to be kind of quick on.
Yeah, they're going to be quick, but so deep fake, you explained it as...
Yeah, it's a video technique, video editing that uses deep learning, machine learning to help it. Basically,
you get a computer. Watson.
Yeah, you get a computer that it works best with celebrities because there's a billion of their faces on the internet. It takes all those faces and it can construct like a 3D head of that person. And they showed, there's video going around with examples. They showed like President Obama giving a speech that was just totally scripted,
and
made up stuff.
It was not
but
him.
it looks, as far as you're watching a video of him talking.
Right, and so
it's a little bit like, okay, yeah, this is a concerning technology. But on the other hand, I think it still has that alarmist.
No, wait a minute.
It has that alarmist quality to the.
Okay, well, let me be the alarmist here because since we've been just talking about President Nelson. You remember President Nelson in the last conference, not this conference, the last conference, said, the time will come when you're not going to be able to tell the truth from the untruth without the Spirit.
Yeah.
And when I read the story about deep fake, I thought, man, you can't trust pictures. You can't trust videos. Now you can't trust. So we're coming to that point where if you have people who are wanting to destabilize society,
which we know that they're
easily do that.
And we've seen already their techniques through social media, through all this
But
stuff.
it's one thing with pictures and memes and stuff. When you can fake video to that extent.
But that's why people need to read their news and not just watch TV. That's my big thing, is that, like, that's why we have journalistic standards. Because if you're like, here's a video of President Obama saying something, and the journalist can be like, I have his proof that he was traveling in another country at the time that was.
But a lot of times now, people are like, no, I don't care what proof you've manufactured.
Right. But
Your facts are not my facts.
That's why we need to be critical thinkers, and that's why we need to be vigilant. But
that's the point.
But that's what we've been saying since before the 2016 election thing. Right. Anyway, it's like that's how you combat that, by just being smart and reading.
I think it's becoming more and more difficult. Sources. It's becoming more and more difficult.
We want the talking head. We want to turn on the TV and get our information that way. And I don't think that's a reliable or particularly promising way to
not in the future
base what we believe on.
Yeah.
You know,
I think
that's why Fox News has the power it does, because it's looking for a demographic who wants to turn on the TV and be told what's going on. There's still people who think there's dangerous caravans of people swarming our southern border.
By the way, the caravan, when Fox News covered mile by mile the caravan, their viewership went up 2 million people.
Exactly, because they know that's
2 million people.
Yeah.
So
they were faking. There was deliberate fake stuff there. There was videos of protests in Tegucigalpa where they were burning American flags, and that was passed on as, look, this is what the people in the caravan are doing. And a quick Google shows you that's wrong, but people don't care.
But people don't want to check. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So again, I think if you're out there listening, you need to be very careful.
How do the people listening know that this isn't fake?
Well, it is.
What's not fake?
I mean, I'm not.
Us. Why? How do they know
we're not fake? We're here.
They don't know. How do they know I'm not in my basement adding you and Anneke's voices and just manipulating previously said things to make it sound like you're saying the things you're saying?
Because we don't have enough time and money, and none of us are famous enough for that to work. That works with President Obama. Nobody's going to make a deep fake video of me. Well, I guess I'm on TV.
You're on TV.
Yeah.
You're on TV for at least 4 nights.
If you do see a fake me, that's what it was.
All right.
No.
Can I even say that?
No, now we have to pay them. Okay. Let's talk about... Oh, man, I hate talking about Texas. Once again, Texas is ruining it for everybody. And by everybody, I mean death row inmates.
Oh, well, there you go. That's a select group right there.
Well, it's the principle, though.
It is the principle. So Texas has a rule that...
They had a rule.
They had a rule. They
had a rule that you could have...
They have a rule, because I don't think the rule's gone.
No, the rule's gone. So they had a rule.
Well, no, their rule was... So what happened was there was somebody being executed who was Buddhist.
Right.
And he wanted his Buddhist religious leader present at the execution.
Which the rule allowed.
The rule in Texas was...
But de facto... it allowed it, but de facto it didn't allow
it.
It didn't allow him because the rule in Texas was that whatever clergy you had in the room when you're being executed had to be an employee of the prison.
And the only ones
that prison only had a Muslim leader and a Christian leader.
Right.
And so they said, you can't have your Buddhist leader here because he's not an employee.
Right.
Well, that didn't make him happy. There were lawsuits. The Supreme Court said, no, if you're going to allow the Muslims and the Christians, you got to allow the Buddhists. So Texas said, fine, nobody gets a leader in the room. They can be in the viewing room along with the victims' families and the press and everybody else, but they can't be in the room with you.
Right.
So Texas's answer wasn't saying, well, they don't have to be an employee of the prison anymore, or, well, let's hire a Buddhist guy, or let's give somebody a visitor's badge and let him in. It was, none of you can have it. If the Supreme Court's going to say it's one or none, or all or none, then it's none.
And it's none, yes, exactly.
Once again, Texas taking it to an extreme and ruining it for everybody.
Well, except, not everybody. It's just everybody on death row.
Well, but all religions, regardless, is
exactly.
It's ruining for everybody.
We would rather make a stink about it and not allow it for anybody than to respect people's final wish as they're being killed by the state.
As opposed to changing the rule that said they had to be employees of the prison, which they could have just said...
You could have put somebody under contract...
hey,
you're an employee for the next hour.
You're not an employee, but if we have somebody,
we're going to contract you. You could be a contract employee.
It's not like the government doesn't do that anywhere else. Jeez.
Exactly.
Right. So instead of addressing the rule that excluded other religions and other religious leaders, and saying, well, you don't have to be an employee. You can bring in whoever you want. If you're LDS, you didn't get to bring your bishop or anyone else in. It was their generic Christian leader who was going to...
Christian dude in Texas is not going to be...
He's basically telling you you're going to hell no matter what, because you're the Mormon. And
you're a Mormon, so you're going to hell. Plus...
Look, by the way, enjoy your lethal injection.
Lethal, the whole lethal injection thing is... Okay.
As opposed to changing the rule, Texas...
Indeed.
Like a 3-year-old...
Right.
Threw a temper tantrum, stomped their feet, and said, fine, I'm taking my ball and going home.
Exactly.
That's why I hate talking about Texas.
Okay, well, there you go. You want to talk about Texas for a minute?
Again?
Yeah.
I just said I don't like talking about Texas.
I know, but as long as we're in Texas...
But I thought this one was worth mentioning because...
It is. So is this one. Different fires at different oil refinery facilities, polluting the air and the environment and the water and everything else. And, they just don't have regulatory rules. They don't have rules. They don't have a regulatory scheme.
Well, it is the Wild West.
For that. Well, no, it's the South if you want to get,
Parts of Texas are the South. Parts of Texas are the West. Parts of Texas are the Southwest.
It's a big state.
Yes.
Most of the state will say we're the West.
Not the part I'm from. The part I'm from is definitely the South.
It's a big state.
Yes.
Anyway, just because the refineries are catching fire and polluting the water and polluting the air and polluting the ground, we don't need no stinking regulations. And that gets me to something that I didn't tell you I was going to bring up. That the Trump administration, you remember this thing about the Boeing got to inspect its own planes because the government said, we'll trust you. They're not going to trust pig farmers to inspect their own meats. So listen, people, because
they thought pork was risky before. If you're like, look, make sure it's fully cooked. Look, there's no such thing as a medium rare pork chop. Okay, there never
Get your
was.
little meat thermometer.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, they're now allowing the industry to inspect itself. Show
of hands who thinks that's a good idea.
Nobody.
If you're driving your car, I'm not thinking you're going to raise your hand because
nobody thinks it's a good idea.
The way John Oliver puts it is, the dingo is now the babysitter.
Yes.
Nobody thinks that's a good idea. But anyway, that's what I just wanted to bring up.
Yeah, the pork industry,
the Food and Drug Administration,
they get to be their own.
The industry gets to be its own inspectors. What could possibly go wrong?
I know. Why don't we let students grade their own tests?
Well, you can, actually. That's kind of a good practice in some ways.
Well, it's a teaching method, but...
Right.
Let them grade and record their own.
It depends what you're evaluating for. Do you want them to learn the stuff, or do you want them to... Yeah. That was just me being snarky.
Well, and we could have a whole discussion on what the whole purpose of school is, too, but,
yes,
Listen, we have educators who listen to us.
Yes.
Okay? And they will tell you that... it's a good idea to let the students learn through any mechanism that they will learn.
Yeah.
But it's also a good idea to measure what they've learned.
Right, but I'm saying if we let the students grade their own tests, and I don't mean trade papers and grade your neighbors.
I'm purposely
it's, we'll just trust you.
I'm just saying I could do a 5-hour podcast on this stuff, and most of you would fall asleep. But
if it's a spelling test, and you just say, okay, at the end of the spelling test, this is how you spell these words, and you say, Amy, what did you get? I got 100. Oh, good for you. And Billy, what did you get? I got 100. Good for you.
Right.
Wait. I would be the kid who said, I only got 4 right.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody. Because schools are not teaching ethics anymore, and there's a whole debate.
Why do you need ethics?
There's a whole debate about whether or not the schools are failing to teach civic responsibility and ethics. And
I think the bigger problem is schools are so non-standard that we don't know. It's everything is governed by your local area. Everything is paid for by your local area. Everything is your local legislator had a bee in his bonnet, and so now you have to say this, that.
And you're not allowed to teach X, but you're required to teach Y.
Right.
And I think
politics in education was
politics
a very big mistake.
Right. I think it is a big mistake. I think it's a big mistake.
In some ways, American education is doing way better than they have in decades because of things we've learned about the way kids learn. And in some ways, we're teaching critical thinking, which is something we never taught before, And so,
see, I was just about to say the opposite is I don't think critical teaching skills are being taught. I think most public schools. The kids are being taught to the test that they're going to have to take that measures them and measures the teachers and who gets a raise and who gets the bonus at the end of the year. 80% of your kids pass the standardized test. Good job. Only 30% of your kids pass the standardized test. What's wrong with you? So we're going to teach the kids the test. And then we're not, from my observation with my kids and everything, the critical thinking skills aren't being taught and encouraged. It's rote memorization.
Well, we had rote memorization when I went to school.
Right, but at some point there was, okay, pick your own essay topic and then write your... You don't get that now.
Really?
Your essay will be on this, and it has to, and they basically write it for you before you even get started.
Well, and the problem is we're in a point where we know more about education than we ever have before, and we've got all these really great methods and best practices, and we're governed in a really stupid way.
Right, and I think that, yeah.
So I agree with that. I was going to say, in the Nordic countries, the kids play more, have less homework, and they seem to do better.
Yeah. I'm just, when I was a kid, it was pick one of these 8 books, read it, and do a book report. Now it's, here's your book, here's the chapter you're going to write about, and then here are the 3 websites you're going to cite when you're...
Well, that is...
We're not teaching the critical thinking. There's not an opportunity to kind of branch out on your own as much. Some charter schools, there are going to be pockets of individual schools, charter or not, or public or whatever, who will do that.
That's the problem is the inconsistency.
But when you say non-standard, you're totally right. Is that it's across the board. And the trend
now with the Betsy DeVos approach to the world is less consistency and more, if you want to call yourself a charter school and you're just a test prep academy and you do whatever, we're going to throw a bunch of money your way. And
Right. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of schools and school districts, in Indiana, there was a story going around about the school district who took the leftover food from the lunches and packaged them and sent them home with kids for the weekends and for the evenings. Because you come in, maybe you get a school breakfast, you get a school lunch, you go home. Are you getting dinner?
Some kids don't get weekend food,
right?
I mean, there
have been schools that pack a backpack and send you home with. They're taking the leftover food from the lunch. They prepare for 1,000 students. Only 900 buy lunch that day. There's some food left over, so they've been packaging it and sending it home with kids
who need it.
Now, to be fair, it's not the school doing it. It is a private, local, third-party charity that's collecting the food from the schools. But the school district said, go to all the schools and collect it. I don't have a problem with it
either.
One, just to make it clear, it's not the school that's doing it. It wasn't the school's idea. It wasn't the school district. It wasn't the superintendent who said, hey, I have an idea. But to their credit, the third party came to the school and said, hey, you guys got a lot of food left with it. You're just tossing. There are kids going home hungry. Why don't we, work together? And so they take it, they package it, they either freeze it if they can.
Good idea.
And they send the kids home with it. Here's my problem with that story. And there was another story, and I just remember when we were talking and putting the list, I said, there's something else we were going to talk about. The 2-year-old who can't walk, and the parents' insurance wouldn't give the kid a wheelchair. And so the high school...
Build a wheelchair.
The high school team, was it an
like
engineering team or robotics?
It was robotics.
Built the wheelchair and everyone applauded it, and it's a great thing. Here's my problem with both stories. It's great that that's happening and people are stepping up.
Well, I have a problem with the 2-year-old, not because he got a wheelchair, but because how many times can you replicate that story?
Well...
that's the issue.
How many times can you replicate, and how many kids don't get because they don't have a robotics team, or the robotics team can't do it, or the shop can't do it.
Right.
I mean, the food one, I think, is more replicable.
It's replicable, but you can replicate it, but here's my problem with both. It plays into the narrative that, we don't have to take care of people because private charities and individuals will step up and do it. Yes, in certain cases, limited cases. But my problem is that this is, we were right. The high school robotics team built the kid a wheelchair. The health insurance shouldn't have to give the kid a wheelchair. Someone else will step in and give the kid a chair.
Yeah, and
we don't have to make sure the kids have food at home because some third-party private organization will come to the schools and collect the food and repackage it and send the kids home. Right. See, the kids aren't hungry. The system works.
Well, no, I agree with you that some people will spin it like that. My problem with that narrative is that it doesn't work across the board.
Right.
It's very selective and very limited.
Yeah. And that's my problem.
And that's the problem that I have.
But I mean,
because you hear the story from the rich school district where the high school team was able to do that. You don't hear the 15 or whatever stories of the kids in downtown Baltimore that don't even have anything close to that.
Right. And it's, how many times have we heard just here in our Utah legislature, we don't need to expand Medicaid. we can, wherever the gaps are, the private charities and doctors will donate their time and
doctors don't donate.
That does not happen.
What are you talking about? When does that ever happen?
What happens is people don't go to the doctor until they have to.
And then you hear a story like this, and they'll say, "See, private charities or private individuals will step up and take care of it." And while it's a good story and those people should be applauded, the fact that it has to be done is problematic.
Well, I think we can applaud the people who are doing it.
Right.
While at the same time reminding people that this does not in any way denigrate the idea that we as a people should be able to function in a larger way. This doesn't let
society off the hook
for allowing it to happen. Government is there, for the general welfare of the people, and that includes making sure people are fed and that people have a roof over their head.
And so I liked the stories, but I also wanted to point out the other side.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Instead of saying, "Oh, look, this is the feel-good story of the week," you know what? But there's going to be another side. There's going to be a side of people who are saying, "See, we don't have to expand Medicaid. We don't have to let we can let insurance companies."
Foundation of libertarianism,
right?
Look, it works.
Yeah,
but it doesn't.
No, if you look at the statistics,
but it's not working.
Right.
And the fact that these two stories made the news and were as big of a story as they were shows that it's not happening enough to say, "See, it works."
Well, and the problem with little local grassroots efforts is that they're often not sustainable, and there's not a team of people to evaluate. There's not a team of people to follow up.
Exactly.
Because once the high school robotics team graduates and that kid is now 5 years old and doesn't fit in his wheelchair, what happens?
Right.
Exactly.
Now he needs a new wheelchair, and there's not going to.
And there's not a system. There's not a network behind it.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to mention, local to Utah, Mitt Romney came out with a paper saying that. The legislatures pared down expansion of Medicaid in violation of what the people had voted on. That he said, well, that's a good idea because of the concern over cost overrun.
It's hedging the bets.
But let me tell you something, Mr. Mitt Romney, Senator, your cost overrun concerns are BS. And the reason they're BS is because our same legislature seems to have absolutely no objection to cost overruns when it comes to building a new prison, which is going to cost $1 billion more than they said it was going to cost, house less people, and provide less services.
Wait.
Or suing the federal government,
or suing the government.
As soon as it's something that fits their agenda, the cost overrun is just fine.
Somebody eerily similar to us said that this was going to happen when they announced the new prison. Now, who was? Oh, that's right. It was us.
Yes.
We said it was going to go over. It was going to be a boondoggle. This was a nightmare to begin with.
Of course.
In order to cut costs, not only are they lowering the number of beds and people that they can house at the prison, the number of people they can in prison, which I guess is a good thing. No,
incarcerate.
Well, the fewer people you'd think would. Oh, we're just going to incarcerate fewer people. We're in prison, fewer people.
They're not.
They're not. They're just going to send them somewhere else. So fewer people, more money. Wait, this is becoming a theme. We're covering fewer people with more money in Medicaid. So this is gonna house fewer people for more money. And they've got the prisoners building furniture.
Yes.
And items to put in.
They've always been. The furniture in my office is built by people that we incarcerate.
No, but they're not building your furniture. They're building their own furniture. Anyone here think it's a bad idea to let a prisoner make a secret compartment in what he knows is going to be his buddy's bunk or something?
Well, I guess he doesn't know whose bunk it's going to be.
No, but you can't tell me there's not going to be some shenanigans going on.
Of course there are. Of course there are.
Well, I think the bigger problem is that we pay prisoners 25 cents an hour to do stuff, and then we sell that stuff.
Well, right.
And they're now a workforce that we rely on.
It's a slave labor.
It is
in a way, and then when they come out, then they don't they don't have a job because we don't let them
And the whole underlying issue here, like we talked about Mitt Romney talking about the budget problems. There's a budget problem you talk about on the state Medicaid level, and then there's a budget problem when you're a single mom whose kid needs to go see a doctor and you can't afford it, and you fall behind on your rent, and then you end up homeless, and then I think the whole thing that's missing here is a thing that came up in conference a couple times about equality, and we talk about having a Zion society, and what's the qualification of a Zion society? They had no poor among them. How do they think we get there?
He said that in conference from the pulpit, and I'm sitting there on my couch and I heard him, and this is how much of a cynic I've become. My first thought wasn't, yes, that's a wonderful message. My first thought was 90% of the people in this state are going to go, yeah, they don't mean that for real.
Right. Or
they don't mean that for real because that's socialism, and we know that's bad.
It's not bad.
Or I've heard people justify this. The way that we get no poor among us is we teach the poor people to work harder. You know,
the poor people.
Do you know any poor people?
The poor people work really hard.
Do you know any poor people?
The poor people work really hard. Do you know how hard it is?
They lend money to each other. Like,
you know how hard it is to be poor?
The poor people work very hard.
Look,
Donna and I spent 3 years in the inner city, okay? Working with the poor. The poor people are working far harder than the middle class or the rich class.
Look, I make a good salary. I don't work hard, okay? There are people in my ward without as much money as me, and they work twice as hard as I do. They're working late nights. They're working weekends. They're doing everything.
They have more than one job. Maybe they don't have a car.
They are hustling.
Have to walk to their job. Or you have to take 3 buses to get there. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
It's hard to be poor. It is not easy being poor. And you can't tell me, oh, well, all you have to do is, work more and they'll get out of poverty. They don't. It's all stacked against them.
Yeah.
When you work 60 hours a week and you can't afford to pay the rent, there's something wrong with our system.
Yeah. So, my first thought when I heard that wasn't, that's a nice message. I agree with it. It's 90% of the people who hear this can go, that's socialism, and he doesn't really mean that.
Right.
He doesn't mean it, like, in real life.
Well, and that's the big obstacle that's standing between us and all of these different issues we're facing as a country right now.
Yeah. Okay. 2 last things. 1, is our country full?
Our country is full. The president.
I don't know. We're getting rid of people left and right. How is it full?
The president said we're full. We're full up.
Has he been to Nebraska before?
Right. He's never driven from Salt Lake to Des Moines, and he's never driven from Des Moines to Montana.
From Denver north on I-25 through that slice of Wyoming.
Yeah.
I think he just needs to take that car trip on his own.
There is Texas. Half of
country
Texas.
is not
Have
full.
you driven through Texas?
Yes, I have.
The Panhandle is pretty big open.
Yes.
Okay, there's lots of open places.
There's a lot of
and
space.
Listen. In the Northeast,
all of North Dakota.
Look, in the Northeast, you remember the Rust Belt? We have cities that are empty, that have houses that are falling apart because nobody's living them. Bring the people, let them fix the houses, let them live there.
Because now you're talking, you're talking about, you just said the Northeast, but all I'm picturing is Detroit. Nobody
it's
wants
Detroit.
to live there.
Well, and I'm going to get really radical here. We have cities full of people that aren't full. Because I've lived in Japan, and you can fit a lot more people in a square mile.
Well, and we like our spread out
I don't
third of an acre. Right. We like our third of an acre. We like our.
I like riding trains places, but I don't.
Well, there's problems in places like Los Angeles that weren't built to house as many people because everything is a single family home.
Right, exactly.
It's not sustainable. It's causing road problems. It's causing pollution problems.
Yeah, exactly.
We're
not full, but the president said we're full.
Right.
So,
the president said we're full, but we're not full. We're not. I mean, maybe parts of us are full. I think New York City might be full. Okay.
Well, and this is really bad. Okay, but I've been tempted to bring this up against people who rail really hard about pro-life, right? And I'm like, if the country is full, then why are you pro-life? I'm not saying that because I am saying I'm endorsing abortion or something like that. But I've known people who were so like, no, the only real place to live is out in the country and this suburban sprawl. And I'm like, you can't go on about that and be pro-life because there's human beings born on the earth and we have to find a place to put them and we have to have good living conditions for all of them.
And Mike Lee said white Americans should have lots of babies.
Right.
Well,
so my federal government is now giving me conflicting messages. We're supposed to be having more babies, but we're full.
We're full.
Where are we going to put all the babies we're having?
Well, it's
Mr. Mike Lee, please tell me where we're putting all these babies.
You're going to put them. All the people.
The babies are being born, and then they're having to leave the country.
Oh well,
which isn't going to help America.
Are these anchor babies? Are these Russian anchor babies? Because I understand there's a lot of them.
I don't think that.
Yeah, that's really what's overflowing in America.
Okay. Anyway, so we're not full. We're agreed on that. Right?
We're agreed.
And the problem is thinking of people as a commodity. That's the problem. Instead of a human being. And thinking that there's it's the
honestly, but
mindset,
think about the quote and where it came from. He thinks of everything as a commodity. Everything's a zero-sum game. Yeah. And so to him, people are a commodity. Mm-hmm. To him, it's the voters are commodity. It's how many votes am I going to get? How many votes are my friends going to get? Mm-hmm. How many people are going to be able to support me? It's a commodity. He doesn't see them. He and a lot of the people in the government in general don't see people as people. There's a line in the West Wing. you have to, there's a lot of people out there, and you can't always think of every person as a person. You have to think in general terms. But at some point, you have to stop thinking in general terms. You have to think of people as people.
Look, we just this week celebrated is the wrong term. This week we remembered the Rwandan massacres between the Tutsis and the Hutus. The president of Rwanda it's been 40 years. Has it been 30 years? It's been a long time. It was 1993. So however,
that's not 30 yet.
No, so it's 30.
It's 20 something.
Well, we're I don't know. We're 19 anyway. There's a remembrance of the Tutsis and the Hutu massacre that happened because the victims were not people. They were subhumans.
Right.
And so this idea that and we don't have to go back to Hitler's Germany.
No, you have to go back to Trump, who said that the people coming across the border aren't people; they're
animals. Exactly.
You don't have to go back more than a year.
We don't have to go back very far. Okay. And this idea that human beings lose the protection of humanity because they're not us is so contrary to the gospel. It's so contrary to the United States the founding ideology that all men are created equal. And I know they let women out, but the idea that, think of that, people tell me this is the aspiration. Okay, well, if this is the aspiration, then can we at least agree?
Then let's get to that point.
Can we at least agree that we're going to treat people like human beings rather than like commodities? And it's interesting that, you mentioned that and you mentioned Trump. My wife and I watched a movie last week, The Butler. I'd never seen The Butler.
You hadn't seen The Butler?
I'd never seen The Butler, and I wanted to, and we watched it a week ago. It was a marvelous movie, but of course, again, it outlines that not very long ago in the United States of America, there was a whole group of people that were not seen as people. Today, we still have people in the United States who argue that if you're not like me, then you're not a person.
Yeah. So the term I was thinking about when I was talking about the West Wing was abstract numbers. Right? You have to deal with large, 300 million people. It's abstract. You can't think of the individual. At some point, even the politicians have to start thinking of the individuals as people. How is this going to affect real people? The last thing I was going to bring up kind of ties into this a little bit. In the state of Washington, Motel 6 is
this one made me mad.
On the hook for $12 million in fines and fees and penalties and everything else because there were 6 Motel 6 chains in the state of Washington who arbitrarily and on their own, if you had a Hispanic sounding name, called ICE and turned them into ICE and said, we have these people's information. We have their home numbers, their home addresses, we have telephone numbers, we have license plates and car makes and models and where they're from.
Shut down.
And here is their information. The Gonzalez family stayed here last week. We don't know if they're legal or not. Go get them.
They need to be
ICE
shut down.
went and did them.
They need to be shut down.
No warrants, no nothing.
Those businesses need to be shut down. The people who run these businesses need to be sued individually in civil court, and there should be criminal penalties for the invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
Sir, it's beyond the pale.
Because, Ms. Garcia here could have stayed in a hotel in Washington.
Come show up at my door, and I will have some things to say to them.
ICE would have broken down your door.
But people who don't benefit from my privilege of looking white, of being white, I'm not even Hispanic.
Oh, it didn't even matter what you looked like. It was if your name sounded Hispanic.
Right, but then there's
someone was just going through the records of who stayed here.
American citizens who are profiled for that and who speak Spanish and look Hispanic.
And whether you're a citizen or not.
It doesn't even matter if you're a citizen or not. You can stay in a hotel in the United States of America and not have the Gestapo show up at your door.
Well,
and that's
apparently
the problem.
not.
And it's really, and the human cost of this kind of stuff, I'm going to call ICE on somebody cost of this stuff. I like to listen to This American Life, the NPR show podcast. Yes. And this past year or so, there have been episodes that I have to turn off because I can't handle the impact. And they've been following immigration stories really closely. And, there's kids who've grown up their whole life in the U.S. and they leave for school one day and they come home and their parents are gone.
Well, and we've talked before.
And this is like a deeply psychologically troubling.
It is.
Well, and it happened with this. I mean, kids came home and parents weren't home.
Yeah.
Why? Because ICE kicked down the door, hauled mom off, went to dad's work, hauled him off. The kid. You've said before on this podcast, ICE is a terrorist thug organization that needs to be gotten rid of.
That's all they are.
And they totally are. Because if Motel 6 calls up ICE and says, hey, the Garcias, someone named Garcia stayed here last night. I wasn't here. I came on at 8 a.m. They were already gone. But looking through the records, the Garcias stayed here. They lived in Salt Lake. Here's their address. Go get them. And ICE doesn't even go, well, let me look into this. Let me open an investigation. They just kick down your door and will rip you and your husband and your kids apart.
Yeah, there's no due process.
And then we'll start asking questions afterwards. I mean, my gosh, ICE should be sued. You know, Motel 6 needs to be shut down.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So President Nelson said it best today.
We're almost out of time.
But seriously, how does a society sustain itself when you cannot have the stability of... This is why we have the Fourth Amendment. This is why we have the need for due process and warrants.
What do you think you do to your future stability as a society when you're raising kids like this? When you're raising...
Exactly.
You know, that's not how you get people to join your
anything.
team.
They don't trust anything.
That's not how you know...
These people at the Motel 6s were not thinking of these families as individuals and as families.
What were they thinking about?
Brown people stayed at my hotel. And we can't have that.
Yeah,
I mean, this is Washington. There aren't supposed to be brown people here.
I think they need to shut those businesses down. Seriously, they need to sue.
It's a massive problem.
It's just ridiculous.
Look, but to me, it is worse than. But it reminds me of took a motorcycle trip to Arizona. Check into the hotel. Need to see your passport. Excuse me. Need to see your passport. Why? Well, to make sure you're a citizen. You don't have to be a citizen to stay in it. No. What do you guys do with tourists?
Yeah,
it's the Grand Canyon. What do you do with the Germans and the Swedes and the Chinese and the whoever else's are coming to see the big hole in your state?
Right.
Do you not let them stay at your hotel?
When your industry is inviting people to come and visit your place, you don't require.
So you had this happen to you when you went to the football game?
Yeah.
I didn't know this. You didn't tell me this.
I thought, I'm sure
I did not tell me this.
And, basically we told them to go pound sand, but they just shrugged their shoulders and let us check in anyway. So it wasn't quite a hotel policy as it was maybe this person being rogue.
Or maybe they were rogue in letting you check in.
Well, and there's a chilling effect though,
There's a chilling effect.
That gets around in the Hispanic community. People don't go there anymore. People don't come out.
Someone said, how do I know you're here legally?
People don't call the ambulance anymore.
You don't.
I know.
You don't have to know whether I'm here legally. That's none of your business. But this is why you're right. There's a backlash. There is a dampening. This is why the Civil Rights Act made freedom of travel essential, and that if you run a business on an interstate or on any highway in this country, it doesn't have to be interstate. It can be a state highway. You must provide rooms for blacks and other people. That's what the Civil Rights Act was all about.
Well, you're right. There are people who are not calling 911 if they need an ambulance. Someone's having a heart attack. Let's see if we can drive them to the hospital. Well, that's even risky because we're going to get there and there's going to be paperwork.
I can tell you, they were on edge before. They were. Yeah. There was times like when I went to my husband's Spanish ward in Connecticut back, and this was before the Trump era. When a rumor just went around town and 80% of the Spanish ward didn't show up to church. They didn't want to leave their house because there was a rumor that the La Migra, the immigration, were going to come that day and check people, and it was just unfounded rumors. But now they're living in a state of terror and fear. People. And that's not a healthy way to live.
Okay, I don't want to give anybody ideas, but I'm kind of surprised that's not happening already. Like, you get the Spanish-speaking wards, and you got some immigration guy there in the parking lot. Let me see your papers.
Yeah, I think that it's
how
only
long
a matter
until that happens?
It's only a matter of time because we know that they're raiding businesses. There was another business raided in Texas this week.
Yeah, 250 people.
They hauled them off. Which
250 people went into work and then didn't go home.
Didn't get to go home. And by the way, it shuts down the business. The economic impact on the family the economic impact on the community.
What would happen to California if all of a sudden we just, if
What a bunch of nonsense.
If anybody,
I hope the avocados that you like, you're comfortable paying $10 an avocado for.
What if nobody in California showed up to work if they didn't have proper documentation?
By the way,
the entire economy of the state would collapse.
By the way,
I'm
going to leave you with this note about California. Because I think it's time for us to stop, right?
It was time for us to stop.
I don't know. So unless you have been shorter, we can get away with a little bit of
So California. So last quarter we had another 350,000 growth job. 80% of that one state, California. Mm-hmm. California, the Socialist Republic of
If they officially change their name, I am officially moving there.
That's right.
The day they officially change their name to the Democratic Socialist Republic of California is the day I start packing boxes.
80% of the growth, 75 to 80% of the growth in jobs in the United States came from that one state.
Right, but Trump will take credit for the job growth.
He did take the credit.
And at the same time, denigrate the state of California.
He did both.
And their policies.
He did both.
Right.
Yep.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what you call cognitive
dissonance.
Well, I was going to say something really mean, but you have to have subcognitive ability functioning before you can have the cognitive dissonance. Sorry, that was flippant, and I'm working on that.
But not wrong. I mean, you're not wrong. Okay. Anyway.
I need to repent because the point is you have to love your neighbor, and that's not...
Do I have to love my neighbor if he's a brown shirt? That's the real question.
We were told he is your brother. They are our brothers and sisters and our neighbors.
I know.
You gotta love them. You can disagree with what they're doing, and you can hate the sin and love the sinner.
I'm not that good.
I'm not that good either.
I'm working on that.
I realize
I have
a
my
hard time
theology means that I need to love Donald Trump, and I'm working on that, but I'm not there yet.
You know what? I'm a hypocrite. I'll tell everyone else they need to love everyone, but there are some people that, Okay, real quick, because this just reminded me. I have a group text with some friends and one of your sons about sports, mainly BYU sports and stuff.
They kicked me out of that
of the group text.
Yeah.
So it was brought to my attention yesterday, that a baseball player, Bryce Harper, is a member of the church. Very active member of the church.
The guy in the Nationals. I knew that and you didn't know.
I knew that.
He's not on the Nationals. I knew that. You didn't know that.
Okay.
He plays for Philly now.
Way behind.
I didn't know he was a member of the church. I think maybe at one time I had heard it, but I hate that guy so much with every passionate fiber of my being, sports fiber in my being.
Why?
I hate that guy.
Why?
No good reason.
Okay. Just because he's not a Cub.
Well, no, because there was talk in the offseason, because he went from the Nationals to the Phillies. He was talking about him going to Chicago. And I literally said out loud, oh, please not him to the Cubs. Because I don't want to have to root for him on my team. I don't like that guy. And
It's completely irrational.
I never said sports was rational. On the group text, he said, did you see Harper's testimony? He put out on Twitter and Instagram and all the social media this huge long testimony about conference and meeting the prophet, and bore his testimony on social media. And I was like,
what a great guy.
I was like, who? Bryce Harper? He goes, and my buddy says, yeah, Bryce Harper. I'm like, man, I hate that guy.
So now you got to repent.
Oh, no. You know what? There's a member of the church out there I just can't stand.
For no reason.
You know what? Watching him,
he rubs me the wrong.
He rubs me the wrong way. Just something about him. I don't like.
New General Authorities. Vaisika Hima is a 70, and let me just say this, just because your friend and mine.
Probably the last time BYU had a punt return for a touchdown was Vaisika.
That's very true. Anyway.
I don't exactly remember what brought that to my brain just now, that Bryce Harper's a member of the church, and I don't like the guy. No good reason. Watching him play baseball, I've never liked him, his attitude, the way everything about him rubbed me the wrong way. And my friend was like, "Yeah, he's a member of the church." I'm like, "Well, that's a little disappointing because I really want to hate the guy." But
the point was, nobody liked Zacchaeus either, and that's the one Sister Eubank told the story about, the little guy sitting up in a tree who was a publican. That's the point of the New Testament, and I'm working on it too. So anyway,
we all have work to do. All right.
And the first African-American General Authority. Not the first African, the first African-American. Okay? We've had African General Authorities before, but of course, people have to twist everything.
it's important for representation. Like, that's a big deal.
It's the first African American.
Like we talked about, there's an apostle who speaks to everyone that you feel. A lot of people don't quite have that. A lot of people don't quite feel like they're represented. So that's...
I was thinking about that, and I don't know why today. I was watching conference and thinking, bunch of white guys forever, and then you had one Hispanic guy, and then you got an Asian guy, and then you kind of got what goes through people's. And so then you had Uchtdorf, who's a white guy, but he's not from the U.S. He's from Germany, and technically he's from the former East Germany. So what goes through people's minds and the rest of the world when new general authorities are announced? When you got a bunch of new 70s called, but there's not that Eastern European, Ukrainian guy. Or do they think, where's my representation for like my region or my nationality? Or I really don't know, because I'm not in that position.
I don't know if it's fully conscious all the time, but there is something when... like,
is that something that we in the United States have kind of made a bigger deal about representation?
No.
Because I don't know.
Okay, here's the real thing. President Uchtdorf gave a talk about being a refugee. How many other apostles in the history of church have given a talk where they could have that perspective? And granted, he was in a really different position, but he was able to speak to part of a human experience. And then I kind of feel that way when I hear a ton of talks about, like, we were snowmobiling in the mountains and our truck got stuck, which is a real thing, but... what's the percentage of the church membership who can resonate with that kind of a metaphor, or even understand what you're talking about?
From the perspective of when they're giving talks and they're telling the stories.
Right.
A lot of it's just going to go over people's heads.
Right. But just the feeling that it matters, that there's people like you, like representation does matter. And that's,
right, but people like you, is that regional?
It can be a lot of things.
Bigger deal.
It's intersectionality.
Skin color. Do the people in Ukraine think, how come a Ukrainian hasn't been called as a general authority before? You got a guy from Eastern Germany. Why not us?
I know for Asian people it's a big deal. I know people that I've worked with who were like, they were really excited when Elder Gong was called.
I was just wondering. I was just wondering earlier today, and I don't know why I was, but it ran through my head.
Yes. I think people
representation matters.
I think it does matter.
Or it might be uncomfortable.
I think it was when they announced the Budapest temple.
Yes.
And I thought, there's never been a general authority from
but now
that area.
No, but now you're going to have you're going to have a former mission president from that country who's going to serve as temple president,
right?
And then might be in line at that point to become an Area 70.
But that caused my brain to start going, do people from Hungary go, well, how come there hasn't never been a Hungarian member of the 70s?
Probably some consciously and some subconsciously.
But they also know...
The subconscious message is the church is for white American people.
But they also know, I think they also recognize that, look, the church is new here. We don't have a whole lot of people. So, I think, look, you were in Belgium... And you kind of saw there was a Belgian Didier at that time.
But I was just kind of wondering at what point are they good enough? Is regional good enough?
I think so.
If you're in Hungary and someone from Poland gets called, are they like, close enough?
I can tell you that my Honduran in-laws were super excited about Elder Soares. He's not even Hispanic, but he's Latino. He's Brazilian.
Right.
But
that's what I'm saying. There's layers. There's
layers of it, and
there's regional.
Yeah.
And then there's like skin color, someone who looks like me, and then there's I want somebody from my hometown.
I think we have to be careful not to bring into the kingdom of God the artificial boundaries and borders.
Right, and that's what I'm saying.
Right, but we can also observe from our sociological viewpoint things that are happening. I know it's got to be an impediment to missionary work. When I was in Asia, I would meet people all the time who are like, well, of course you're Christian. You're from a Christian country. You're in a church full of Christian people. That's not me. If we had more of a visible representation of this is a worldwide thing,
right? And
that makes a difference.
And I get that, and
how relevant it is.
I was just wondering at what point, and it's just an open-ended question. It's not
the reason I brought it up is because I was excited that I knew two of the new
right, exactly.
So I was excited that I knew two of the general authorities. Obviously, people are going to associate And if there's somebody that from their region, from
and that's what I was saying.
I think it's going to be.
And they can
running
speak
through my mind
more
is
genuinely to them. Like when Elder Kikuchi was a general authority, he's not anymore. But he, like people in Japan, loved when he would come and speak, because he could speak to the understanding they had about things,
right? And
we don't assign our own.
I get the talk.
We don't have a quota.
I get I know, but I get when they're talking from the pulpit, when they're giving their stories, and they can. Look, the guy from Utah who talks about taking his truck into the mountains, not everyone's going to get, okay?
Right, and that's 80% of the talk. So, that's kind of, that's
and I get that's a problem. They need to kind of get away from that stuff. And remember, they're speaking to a worldwide church and maybe give better references that everybody can understand. But when they're calling you authority, and I think it was because of the Budapest Temple, it made me think, well, if someone from, Hungary goes, well, we have an Eastern European Uchtdorf, we're going to count as Eastern European, even though Germany's not, but it was Eastern Germany, whatever. And that's close enough, and we feel represented. Or, no, I want someone from, they'd all, I think, be happy with someone if somebody from Hungary was called. But at what point do they go, yeah, that's close enough, I feel like I'm represented, or, no, that's, there's nobody there that represents me and my viewpoint. I
think the answer is there's a million levels of that.
There is.
It's intersectionality.
But you're also you're never going to get everyone completely represented to the point where everyone's happy either.
No, but wouldn't it be cool? Like, I don't know. I can't, prognosticate it, but wouldn't it be cool if we got to a point where the 12 apostles and the 70 and everyone else was just representative of the world, because that's the way
Well, and that, I was thinking that would be great, is if, you've got 8 continents.
Yeah, wait a minute. There's nobody coming from Antarctica, okay?
I don't know. Scientists go to church.
Okay, you got 7 real continents.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where's the Australian guy?
Well, there have been some theories,
But not.
Is that Owada Japanese?
Yeah. Well, I think he's. I mean, he Japanese American. I heard there's chatter on my.
He was born in
mission
Japan.
page.
He was born in Japan.
There's chatter on mission page because he was a teacher at the MTC and a bunch of people know him. So, see, people love that connection.
Right.
So
well,
much people
we all love to have a connection.
Had him as an MTC teacher.
But also, I'd like to see. This is going to sound bad, and I'm going to take it the wrong way, but I'm going to say it anyway. Not the 70 level. I want to see the quorum of the 12 more representative. Because 70s get released. They come and they go. Yeah. The quorum of the 12, I'd like to see a more representative. Yeah. Or it'd be great if there was a bit of a more representative. Not to say that I think they should implement their own version of the Rooney Rule, where they have to consider, okay, we interviewed 2 Hispanics, and we thought about 3 black people, and we thought about 2 Middle Eastern people, and then we settled on the white guy from Salt Lake anyway. At some point, I think if you're worldwide, it is.
I think it is.
But but it made me wonder: is it how do what do other people think? And
there's a lot of people.
And I know that there's
women who feel
a million
really strong ways about female representation.
But it caused my brain.
I'm glad that women can pray now, but still we get 1 or 2 women speakers at church, and they're like, well, there aren't that many, female auxiliaries. We're like, well, does it have to be a female auxiliary that speaks? Why is it 80% men? So there's. I guess
I would say why
This is all getting cut, by the way.
I think it's a good conversation.
My mental exercise.
This is actually a good part. This is a good part of the
conversation. People listening to podcasts can pause a podcast and listen
to the second half later. No, you have to listen to the whole thing in one setting. No.
Well,
anyway, my brain in this, for 12 seconds, kind of just mused on that today, and then
there's lots of people's brain who muses on that for a lot of time.
Well, probably a lot longer than my 12 seconds.
And there's a lot of them on Twitter, and it's fun. It's an interesting community. There's lots of stuff out there.
Yeah, I try to stay away from a lot of it.
Me too.
So, anyway, all that being said, thanks for listening.
If you're still listening,
you may pause us and come back later. But if you want to be like Eugene and you want us to talk about something specific, if you want to send us a comment or a question or a thought or a musing and something ran through your head for 12 seconds during conference, send us a note. You can
send us a tweet.
Chris
won't read it, but I will.
I'll read it. I just, it may take me a little while. The producer will forward it to me. At Latter Day Left on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. Just do a search for Latter Day Left, and you can message us there. You can email us, latterdayleft@gmail.com. We're happy to take any kind of form of communication in those ways.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
Make sure to listen to part 1 of our General Conference Recap. This week's episode was produced and edited by Marlo Balmanno, and our theme music is a selection from Tate Peterson's Midday Blues. Don't forget, if you want to contact us, please email us at latterdayleft@gmail.com or find us on Facebook and Twitter.
And you
know I'm still running it, right? I haven't stopped it yet.
Oh, good. In the middle of conference, because this will go to the bloopers outtake. In the middle of conference,
It was not the middle, it was the end. I send you one picture at the end of conference.
You send me a text with 30 minutes left, i.e. before the prophet speaks.
It was, wait.
Yes, you
I'm going
did.
to check my phone on the timing of that, but I think you paused.
Before the prophet spoke.
Wait, what is this? We don't have.
I'm recording this, by the way, because this is...
Okay. 3:26 p.m.
Oh, yikes.
Oh, yikes.
What do you send? I want to know about this.
This is funny.
It's a picture of a bunch of old guys
It's
sitting
a
around
bunch of guys playing backgammon, and the kid's soccer ball is about to hit the board.
The kid's soccer ball is about, for those who are listening, if this makes the blooper, the kid's soccer ball is going to hit the board, and the caption is, in a moment, those kids are going to learn many new words. It was funny on a couple levels, because Dad and I sit and play backgammon all the time. But
We do.
All right.
But not during conference.
And your kids learn new words.
But not during conference.